brother from Nigeria. He spoke some very valid points there, and the questions posed by my younger sister Amna was also very useful question, number of useful questions. Now, the problem with Africa is we have to be able, when we speak on issues, we have to be able to categorize Africa scenarios along different lines. Of course, being a South Sudanese, and majority of us who are in this platform today are also South Sudanese, we will be a bit biased towards the situation of the need for peace right now, because without peace, we cannot do anything. However, there are other parts of Africa which have been enjoying relative peace, stability for a long time, so they will be able to talk more along the lines of technology, lines of developing corporations like cooperatives of farmers associations and so forth, and that who will be able to speak on certain issues to inform the policymakers, like was mentioned earlier on also by our Nigerian. So the situation in Nigeria or most of West Africa is quite different from certain parts of East Africa, South Sudan, Somalia, and other parts that are a bit complicated. I will begin more elaborating on the issue of South Sudan, because that's where I think Amna is also puzzled. Our younger sister Amna, and most of Africa's youth are puzzled. And I will also move on to the issue of leadership for the youth, because that's also a chunk of everything that Africa suffers from. Whether we are in conflict situations, post-conflict, or in stable countries, we have issues of youth participation that is missing hugely. The issue of peace is true. Peace is a complicated matter. It's not something we look up the sky to get from the sky or from someplace or from another capital city or something like that within Africa, but it's the way we look at life ourselves. In the case of armed conflict, peace is not owned by the people. It's often at the whims or the hands, at the mercy of those who carry the guns. That's why there is setups of peace talks that happen in, for example, IGAD in East Africa, for South Sudan for a long time, peace talks. Myself, I was also a peace negotiator in 1999 until 2005 when we signed a comprehensive peace agreement. But the problem with that kind of peace, I call it, it's a peace that is confined to political peace agreements, whereby those who carry guns together with those in power, already in power, be it the government or whatnot of the day, and they amicably decide to share power, positions among themselves, and there will be some semblance of peace, but it's not really lasting peace. My concern has been, as a veteran peace negotiator since 1999 up to now, is that the absence of people, the absence of our community groups, the absence of women, the absence of youth in participating in that kind of peace process is what is making the peace confined to political peace agreements, political power positions, and so forth. So people on day-to-day lives, yes, as Sister Amna said, people live communities side by side each other, no problem, but they really don't feel the final peace and the real peace. Because look, peace is also, when you have real peace, you have economic stability. In the case of South Sudan, it hasn't, because it's at the whims of certain people who carry guns. It becomes very difficult to transcend to the people so that I can make plans. Let me say, as a farmer or as a fisherman or as whatever activity that I do in my village, I will not be able to project 5 years from now, because I don't know what will happen within even 6 months. Maybe another armed group will come, maybe another, etc. So basically, peace is not, it's quite uncertain. And when it's uncertain, obviously, then we are not able to have economic, any form of stability, including economic stability. So we cannot project, we cannot plan. We cannot say, you know what, I'm going to grow for this season, this type of crops, and for the other season, I will grow other types of crops, and so forth and so on. The same thing with children not being able to go to schools, because schools are always interrupted. It doesn't matter whether they're makeshift schools, whether they're proper structure schools, it always is interrupted by the activity of lack of peace in the country, well, or what, in the country as a whole. So what is important is now what we need to look at as youth, and this is now, I want to draw it because I don't want to focus, I don't want to take too much of the space here now. I would rather have it more interactive, if I may be allowed. That what we need to do is that the youth in Africa, really, the youth are more than 70%, perhaps 72 or so percent of the population. So obviously, this 70% is not utilized, because that's the age where they're most productive. That's the age where their minds are also productive, their bodies are also productive. So if they're not utilized, they're not part and parcel, be it peacemaking in conflict areas, post-conflict areas, or stable Africa. That is, like, for example, Eastern and Southern Africa, Western and Southern Africa, some parts of East Africa where there is relative stability. But if the youth are not included decision making, youth are not part and parcel of making decisions in the country, politically, economically, etc., then it becomes that we have an absence of 70% of the workforce, the productive minds, the productive everything into the mainstream of issues. So obviously, then our leaders are making decisions that are backward, decisions that are from what they learned in the 30s, in the 50s, in the 60s, which is not up to date with where we are today. So if you preclude all that from there, then obviously you are not only slowing and stagnating the progress of that country, but you're also taking it to look backward instead of looking forward with what we are in today. And that's why even those who are advocating for technology and all that are also frustrated, be it in Nigeria, be it in South Africa, wherever they are. They also at some point get to meet a deadlock, a dead end, you know, because the end of the day, the decision makers in the country cannot fully adapt to what today is at in terms of technology. So how do we ensure the youth is at the forefront? This is the question that I'm putting it now upon our youth. When I look, for example, at the most recent example of Uganda, you know, Bobby Wine, the youth, the young man who's 38 years old, he's a few years younger than me. He is brave because he decided, he, like all other Ugandans, gave them President Museveni more than 30 years in power, every year giving him a chance, every year giving him a chance. But the country is not moving anywhere. A lot of dreams and aspirations are stagnant. Nothing is happening in the country simply because, you know, not only Museveni is old, is not able to move the country forward, but he is marred with a lot of corruption around him. A lot of people, including his family, is implicated in corruption. So this young man decided to take on the responsibility and the duty upon himself that he cannot keep quiet. And look how Ugandans have all come up. All the people of Uganda have all rose up, and hopefully the start of next year, they will be able to now push forward their candidate. So I'm urging our young people that it's not time to sit back and relax, you know, and say, you know what, until we are going to be invited into decision making. No, you have to take it upon yourselves. But of course, it means you have to organize yourselves as young people. And this is why, for example, at STEPS, we started this political party, because I realized as a person who entered into politics at a younger age, I was also a youth when I entered into politics 20 years ago, that it was hard. It was hard for me to express myself as a young person among all these adults, you know, these like people who are like way in their 30s at that point, 50s, 60s, whatever. And, you know, they always tell us, you know, how we are in Africa. We respect our elders, and they respect us too. But they look at us when you are young, they're like, you don't know much, you know, keep quiet, you cannot say much. So they don't really give us a chance as younger people to express ourselves fully. And so our self-esteem and confidence is lacking there. But you can come together as young people. When we came as STEPS, the People's Peaceful Movement is for two reasons, really primarily two reasons. One is that in South Sudan, unless you take up arms, nobody recognizes you. Unless you take guns, nobody recognizes you. So that's one thing. The second thing is that we have tribalism at the political level. I wouldn't say at the grassroots level, because the communities themselves, we people to people, we love each other. We have lived there together side by side from time immemorial. But some politicians are taking advantage or exploiting some people who want to climb up quickly for the sake of getting money or whatever. Then they exploit them to act as mongers, as dividers, ethnic dividers among certain communities. And so there's some political rivalries and fightings going on. So the youth need to come together on these two grounds. One is the youth feel that of course, obviously, they're the majority of the population, but they also feel that we cannot continue life with bloodshed. It's not going to take us anywhere. Somebody even, he wrote here, I think one of the guys who wrote in the chat, somebody called Dak, I think Brother Dak mentioned something, that the youth, all this beautiful talk about dreams and technology and development and economy and everything is all beautiful, but we cannot have that without peace. But we go to the dilemma of peace is only inclusive of those who take up arms, not the youth, not the women, not the majority of the population outside the boardroom of peace talks. So the youth need to come together because they're excluded. Youth, and when I talk about youth, I mean both gender, girls and boys coming together, and regardless of tribe. This is very, very important. I must, when I'm sitting down as a young person, if I am a Nuer, or if I'm a Dinka, if I'm a Bari, these are the ethnic communities, the various ethnic communities we have in South Sudan. Let me look next by my side. The person sitting next to me, which community he or she comes from? And is it only a table full of only young men? Where are the girls? So really the young people must rise up. They must come together and they must leave no one behind. They must make sure they come together as boys and girls, and regardless of our communities. And you know what? Numbers matter. So even though they exclude the youth from peace talks, they exclude them from decision making, but when you come together, as many thousands of youth coming together, obviously numbers matter. People will begin to recognize you. And because then, of course, among yourself, we got to put aside all the petty squabbles that we have as young people. For example, issues of leadership. Who among us could be our leader? Who could be doing the youth mobilization? Who can take care of the finance? Who can take care of the articulation of the agenda? Who can do the media work? We divide ourselves among yourselves, the right person in the right place. Remember, the youth must learn from the mistakes of the older generation of leadership in Africa. This is something generic, like I said. Whether you're from Cape Town or you're from Cairo or from Nairobi or from Juba or Lagos, we are all sharing the same thing. Youth are excluded from decision making, and there is a lot of exploitation of our communities. There's a lot of division of our community. Tribalism is rife. There's a lot of corruption. These are generic things happening there. But the youth leadership must be a different type of leadership, must offer a different type of leadership. And how are you going to achieve it? By coming together. There is no any other solution to this. And I told you, from within the boardroom of peace talks, this is specifically to countries that are in conflict areas like South Sudan, Somalia, and whatnot. In those rooms, even the mediators themselves are octogenarian people. They're old. They only see people who carry guns. Their ideas and their thoughts of peace are also of years gone by, you know? So peace must be owned by the people. Peace must not be confined only to political peace agreements. And let me tell you something, even for some of us who live in cities in Africa, and we think that, or countries in Africa where we think there's relative stability or relative peace, but are we really at peace? I will conclude with that statement there. Are we really at peace when you cannot sleep at night safe at home, and you have to have all these thick walls, big thick walls around us to protect us from whatever kind of burglars or thieves or whatever, armed robbers and all that. So really, peace is a very, very complex, detailed stuff. It's security, it's personal safety, is a stability, including economic stability. So I project for my family, for my children, and my children will also know that, that doing activities, schools and sports and things, they can plan and they can project, because all these add up to economic stability and progress of Africa eventually. But for as long as there's always something taking us back in terms of personal safety and security, whether we are in front lines, whether we are even in urban areas or cities in Africa, but we don't feel safe, these are all issues connected with governance. These are all issues connected that we must demand for change in them. Rule of law, protection of citizens, protection of people must become a demand by us as Africans. But the youth must come together in order to offer alternative solution, alternative leadership, type of leadership in Africa, where respect for law, where people feel protected, where people can dream, where people can make plans, where people can build, people can come up with so many ideas. I mean, the ideas are endless. So this is what I wanted to say for now, and I don't know if there's anybody has any other questions or something, but this is what the issues, of course, are lengthy, can never be exhausted in one discussion, but in summary, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I have a question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Suzanne Jambo, the founder of Step Movement. So we're going to go ahead and move for the question. Albo?
We would like to welcome Nyajo, but before she come in, let me ask you a question. So what are you doing right now as a leader of STEP? What are you doing, and how far have you reached? I understood that you have a lot of youth behind you. This is what I have gathered according to my research. And you are doing an exceptional job bringing the youth together. You are participating in many platforms on social media and WhatsApp. You are trying to bring youth together, and you have a quite number of mentorship that you are giving to the youth. So what are your steps right now that you're doing to make sure the youth overcome the challenges, and realize the opportunity that they are having in South Sudan?
Yeah, well, other than motivating and mentoring, constantly hands-on, because I realized that our youth, the challenges we have with our youth in South Sudan is that, when we are born in war, even your parents were born or brought up during wartime, it's deeply traumatizing, and people give up easily. People squabble easily. So I have to be constantly on, almost like their mother. People contact me almost on hourly basis. They're stuck with this issue, stuck with that issue. I'm always trying my best to be there for them, because I realize that we are a broken society. Our society is broken in so many ways and in so many layers and levels. However, being also the bridge between the old and the young, I try to utilize that, because I fortunately for all of us, I managed to build a good name within South Sudan, regionally and internationally. So I try to inform the world, to mobilize us. And I realize the number one challenge we have right now in South Sudan is not only the youth coming together, but also the lack of space, basic freedom space. Like in South Sudan today, in Juba, for example, or Wow Malakal, if 10 young people meet together, immediately national security agents will be there to arrest and detain and probably torture and kill them. So because I realized that youth cannot come physically together, only through social media and with pseudo names and fake names and things, so that people don't trace them, that we are working as steps on strategies how to put pressure on the government in South Sudan by African nations and the world, to put pressure on the government of South Sudan to release all these oppressive mechanisms that they're putting on the people. For example, the National Security Act of 2014, which is mandating the National Security Services, with NSS of General Akol Kor, which is always detaining people. As soon as they see young people, more than 5 young people sitting together, they must come and raid and take one of those young people. And next thing is, we don't know what happens to that young person. So we are doing our best as steps to come up with strategies and mechanisms how we can put pressure and expose President Kiir and his ruthless General Akol Corps of National Security Service, that these guys must abolish and remove those laws, curtailing laws, so that our people can move freely. Because without that in place, it becomes very hard for the youth to come together and for anyone to even feel free in the country. So this is the strategy we're working on. And of course, as we do that, the next steps would be to start advocating for early elections in the country, early, free, fair, credible elections in the country. So that's what we're also working on. And like I said, I use my Kongwi level in the middle. I'm in the middle. So trying to use my good friends that I know within Africa and within the world community to keep them always on the alert, always, informed and updated. That the youth are ready and willing, but their hands are tied to the back. They cannot do anything because we have tried. As you know, Chua Elbow, you have been with us in the Red Card movement, for example, last year when we tried with the youth and how our young people were arrested in Juba, and some of them, we don't even know what happened to them to this day. We're trying to trace them. And some of our young people were arrested even in as far as Kenya, neighboring country Kenya, and detained. And so Amnesty International work and thing, and to release them. So we don't want to subject our youth to any more bloodshed, because the country has seen enough bloodshed. We don't want any more of that. So that's where the stage at. The strategies to put pressure on President Kiir and expose him and his military rule for what it is, and so the world can see and put pressure on him diplomatically and otherwise, so that we have a little bit of space for the young people to be able to express themselves on what they want and what they demand, because it's their country. So that's where we're at now. Thank you.
So I have a quick question. I have a quick question, and then I'm going to give it to the floor, Elbow. Ms. Suzanne, currently there is, in the continent, there is this free trade area agreement. And how can you use advantage of such agreement South Sudanese use to privilege themselves continentally or internationally? What use can do in that?
Well, there's also free trade agreements, also bilateral and multilateral regional agreements. But South Sudan also does, sadly, is another aspect of bad governance in South Sudan, is we don't, as a government, they don't pay their membership dues and fees and all that. So South Sudanese passport holders are even very frustrated at entry points when they come to Uganda, maybe Uganda to a lesser extent, but Kenya and other places. So movement of the people at the moment even is not as it used to be, simply because of the membership fees that we don't pay as a country. So all these things can only begin to happen and be enjoyed and be explained to the people step by step once we have in place a better government. This is diplomacy is an intricate thing, and then also getting the people to understand the usefulness between people in Africa moving freely in Africa. It takes a lot of time, because at the moment the exit that is happening from South Sudan into neighboring countries is as refugees. People flee in order to go to refugee camps in Kenya or Uganda and beyond. So trade for now, I mean, with the failing economy, with the unprecedented, and it's very difficult even to verify what's the value of the South Sudanese pound at the moment. The economy is just appalling. It becomes very, very difficult to put any meaning to even any existing agreements between South Sudan and neighboring countries. So it's complicated.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mary, can I go ahead and use
that? Yeah, sure.